I didn't think he'd take it literally. That's what I need everyone to understand first. I thought my framework for understanding infidelity was philosophical, theoretical, a way of intellectualizing behavior that most people condemn reflexively. I thought when I explained that cheating was just emotional evolution and that monogamy was an outdated social construct, he'd engage with the ideas academically. I thought my sophisticated understanding of human nature elevated me above conventional morality. I was catastrophically wrong about all of that. My boyfriend, his name is Kieran, and I had been together for 2 years, living together for 6 months in a beautiful loft apartment downtown. Really solid relationship by most measures, comfortable, compatible, connected. The kind of relationship where you've settled into routines and inside jokes and shared life. But I'd been feeling restless, feeling like maybe I needed more intellectual stimulation, more excitement, more validation from multiple sources. Feeling like maybe monogamy was limiting my personal growth and emotional development. I'd been reading a lot of modern relationship theory over several months. Started innocently enough with mainstream articles about communication and emotional intelligence, but gradually moved into more radical territory. Articles about ethical non-monogamy and how it could work for couples who communicated well. Articles about how traditional relationship structures were designed for property transfer and patriarchal control rather than human fulfillment and genuine connection. Articles about how expecting one person to meet all your needs, emotional, intellectual, physical, social, was unrealistic and unfair and set relationships up for failure. Books about evolutionary psychology claiming humans aren't naturally monogamous, that we evolved for multiple partners and complex relationship structures, that jealousy is a learned social construct rather than a natural emotion hardwired into us. Books about how monogamy was invented relatively recently in human history for economic and social control purposes rather than because it actually serves human happiness or relationship satisfaction. Podcasts about relationship anarchy and breaking free from societal expectations about love and commitment. About how relationship structures should be individually negotiated rather than socially imposed. About how we should question everything we've been taught about love and loyalty and partnership. About building relationships that serve the people in them rather than adhering to templates that serve society. And I'd started developing my own philosophy from all this reading. My own comprehensive framework for understanding relationships and desire and connection and growth. I'd spent weeks thinking about it, refining it, building arguments to support it. I called it emotional evolution. The basic foundational idea was that people grow and change constantly throughout their lives. Our emotional needs evolve as we develop. Our intellectual interests shift as we learn new things. Our physical desires change as our circumstances and bodies change. Our social needs fluctuate based on life stages and personal development. And trying to force all those constantly evolving needs into one static, unchanging relationship was fundamentally constraining natural human development and personal growth. That pursuing connections with multiple people wasn't betrayal of existing relationships. It was expansion of your capacity for love and connection. It was growth rather than cheating. It was evolution rather than infidelity. What society pathologized as cheating was actually just emotional evolution that monogamous structures couldn't accommodate or recognize or make space for. We'd created this rigid binary, faithful or cheating, when reality was much more complex and nuanced and developmental. I'd tried to explain this increasingly sophisticated philosophy to Kieran multiple times over several months. Tried to get him to engage with the concepts intellectually rather than just reacting emotionally. Tried to get him to consider that maybe traditional monogamy wasn't serving us optimally, wasn't allowing us to grow as individuals, wasn't accommodating the full complexity of human need and desire. "I've been thinking about emotional evolution," I'd said one evening while we were making dinner together, "about how people change and grow, and sometimes that growth involves new connections and new relationships that complement rather than replace existing ones." "What does that mean exactly?" Kieran had asked, looking up from chopping vegetables. "It means that maybe monogamy isn't the only valid relationship structure," I'd explained, warming to my topic. "Maybe people can have multiple meaningful connections simultaneously. Maybe pursuing attraction to someone new isn't betrayal of existing love. It's expansion of it. It's emotional evolution. It's growing beyond the artificial constraints society has placed on human connection." "So you're saying you want an open relationship?" he'd asked directly. "I'm saying I want to think critically about whether monogamy serves us or just constrains us," I'd replied, not quite answering. "I'm saying that maybe what we call cheating is just people following their natural emotional evolution, and we've pathologized it because of outdated social structures." Kieran had looked uncomfortable. "So if you slept with someone else, you'd want me to see it as your emotional evolution rather than cheating?" "I'm talking philosophically," I'd said, deflecting. "I'm talking about examining our assumptions about relationships, about considering whether monogamy is natural or just socially enforced, about whether we're limiting ourselves by adhering to traditional structures that might not fit modern understanding of human psychology." "But practically, you're saying cheating isn't really wrong if we reframe it as growth?" "I'm saying the framework of cheating and wrong is itself limiting, that maybe we need new language and new ways of thinking about connection and desire and relationship evolution." Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. He'd seemed troubled by these conversations, but hadn't shut them down completely. Had engaged with the ideas even while clearly disagreeing with the conclusions. Had asked questions and pushed back and tried to understand where I was coming from, even though my philosophy clearly made him uncomfortable. And then I acted on my philosophy. Met someone at a work conference. His name was Marcus, attractive, intellectually stimulating, interested in me. We'd had drinks, talked for hours about philosophy and psychology and modern relationship theory. Ended up in his hotel room, slept together. Multiple times over the 3 days of the conference. When I got home, I'd decided to be honest with Kieran about what had happened. Not because I felt guilty, I genuinely didn't, based on my framework, but because I believed in transparency and thought he deserved to know about my emotional evolution. Thought he might even understand if I explained it properly, using the theoretical framework I'd been developing. "I need to tell you something," I'd said the evening I got back, sitting down across from him in our living room. "Something happened at the conference. I met someone, Marcus. We connected intellectually and emotionally, and physically. We slept together. Multiple times. And I want to be honest with you about that because transparency is important to me, even as I'm exploring my emotional evolution." Kieran had stared at me for a long moment. Just stared. His face going through several expressions. Confusion, then understanding, then something harder to read. "You cheated on me." "I don't think cheated is the right framework," I'd said, using the language I'd prepared. "I think what happened was emotional evolution. I met someone who stimulated me intellectually in ways I've been craving. We formed a connection. We acted on that connection. It doesn't diminish what you and I have. It expands my capacity for connection and growth. This is what I've been trying to explain about moving beyond limiting monogamous structures that constrain natural human development. You cheated on me." He said it slowly, emphasizing each word. "I evolved emotionally," I corrected. "I pursued a connection that served my growth as a person, and I'm being transparent about it because I value honesty in our relationship, even as I explore connections outside it. This is exactly what modern relationship theory supports. The idea that one person can't meet all your needs and pursuing fulfillment elsewhere isn't betrayal, it's self-actualization. How many times did you sleep with him? Does the number matter? We connected over 3 days. The specific count of physical encounters seems less important than the emotional growth I experienced through expanding my connections beyond the artificial constraints of traditional monogamy. How many times? 4 times. But Kieran, you're focusing on the physical when the important thing is the emotional evolution, the intellectual connection, the personal growth, the expansion of my capacity for human connection. This is what I've been reading about, what I've been trying to explain to you. Stop calling it emotional evolution, Kieran interrupted, voice getting harder. You cheated. You went to a conference, met a guy, fucked him 4 times over 3 days, and came home to tell me it was personal growth. That's not philosophy. That's not evolution. That's just cheating with pretentious justification. You're not engaging with the framework, I said, frustrated. You're falling back on conventional moral structures instead of thinking critically about whether monogamy serves us. I don't need to engage with your framework, he said flatly. I need to respond to the fact that my girlfriend fucked someone else and wants me to congratulate her on her emotional growth. That's reductive. That's exactly the kind of closed-minded response I was hoping you'd evolved beyond. He laughed, actually laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Evolved beyond. Emotional evolution. You've really committed to this language, haven't you? You've really convinced yourself that sleeping with someone at a conference is sophisticated philosophical exploration rather than basic betrayal. It's not betrayal if I'm being honest about it. Being honest after the fact doesn't make it not betrayal. You didn't ask permission. You didn't discuss this openly beforehand. You didn't get my consent to pursue other connections. You just did it and then came home and told me I should be okay with it because you've read some articles about relationship anarchy. I'm trying to have an evolved conversation about this, and I'm trying to tell you that you cheated on me, and no amount of intellectual framework changes that fundamental fact. We'd argued for hours, me trying to get him to engage with my philosophy of emotional evolution and modern relationship structures, him refusing to accept my framework and insisting on calling what happened cheating and betrayal, neither of us convincing the other. Both of us frustrated and hurt and unable to find common ground. Eventually, he'd said he needed space to process, needed time to think about what this meant for us, needed to figure out if he could move past this or if it was relationship ending. I'd agreed, confident that once he had time to think rationally about my framework, he'd understand I was pursuing growth rather than engaging in betrayal. Og jeg har samlet inn til Helena Carne in town da Cantrelle. 3 days later, Kieran came home from wherever he'd been staying, walked into our loft looking calm and resolved, sat down across from me with something that looked almost like peace on his face. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he started, about what you said, about emotional evolution and modern relationship structures and moving beyond traditional monogamy, about how one person can't meet all your needs, about how pursuing connections elsewhere is growth rather than betrayal, and I've decided you're absolutely right. I felt relief wash over me. Really, you understand now? Completely. Your framework makes total sense. People do evolve emotionally. Connections with multiple people can be meaningful. Monogamy is a social construct. Pursuing what you need for personal growth shouldn't be constrained by outdated relationship structures. I get it now. I'm so glad you've been able to think about this more openly. So I've been applying your philosophy, he continued, thinking about my own emotional evolution, about what connections I might need that you're not providing, about how I might be constraining my own growth by staying in a monogamous structure that isn't serving my development. Something in his tone made me nervous. What do you mean? I mean, I've evolved emotionally, Kieran said calmly. I've pursued connections that serve my growth, and I'm being transparent with you about it because transparency is important even as I explore relationships outside our traditional structure. My stomach dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying I've met someone. Actually, I reconnected with someone. My ex-girlfriend Simone, the one I dated before you. We ran into each other 3 days ago when I was processing everything. Started talking. Realized we still have really strong intellectual and emotional chemistry. Spent the past 3 days together. Slept together. Multiple times. And I wanted to be honest with you about my emotional evolution. You, what? I cheated on you, he said, using the word deliberately. Using traditional language that you don't prefer. But using your framework, I evolved emotionally. I pursued a connection that stimulated me in ways I've been craving. I reconnected with someone who understands me on deep levels. And it doesn't diminish what you and I have had. It expands my capacity for connection and growth, just like you explained. That's not, you can't what? Can't apply your philosophy to myself. Can't pursue emotional evolution the same way you did. Can't explore connections outside our relationship structure. Why not? You just spent days convincing me this is sophisticated modern thinking rather than betrayal. So I'm being sophisticated and modern. I'm emotionally evolving with my ex-girlfriend. How many times? I asked, voice shaking. Does the number matter? He echoed my words back to me. We connected over 3 days. The specific count of physical encounters seems less important than the emotional growth I experienced through expanding my connections beyond the artificial constraints you and I had been operating under. How many times, Kieran? 6 times, over 3 days with Simone. But you're focusing on the physical when the important thing is the emotional evolution, the intellectual reconnection, the personal growth, the expansion of my capacity for human connection. This is exactly what you've been explaining to me, that pursuing these connections isn't betrayal, it's self-actualization. I felt like I'd been punched. This is different. This is your ex. This is someone you have history with. This threatens us in ways that you fucking a stranger at a conference doesn't, Kieran interrupted. Please explain the principle that makes your emotional evolution acceptable, but mind-threatening. Please articulate how the framework works differently when I apply it. Because I was honest about it being growth. You're doing this to hurt me, to get revenge. I'm doing this to pursue my emotional evolution, he said, still using that calm tone. Just like you were. And I'm being transparent about it, just like you were. I'm applying your exact framework to my exact situation. The only difference is, you don't like it when you're on the receiving end. Did you sleep with her to get back at me? Did you sleep with Marcus to get back at me? He countered. Or did you sleep with him because you were pursuing connection and growth? I'm doing the same thing. I'm pursuing connection with someone who stimulates me emotionally and intellectually. Someone I have deep history with. Someone who understands me in ways you apparently don't, since you couldn't understand why your emotional evolution was actually just cheating. So this is revenge. This is me taking your philosophy seriously, Kieran said. You spent months telling me monogamy is outdated, that pursuing multiple connections is growth, that what society calls cheating is just emotional evolution, that one person can't meet all your needs. So I stopped trying to be your one person. I started meeting my needs elsewhere. I evolved emotionally with someone who was available and interested and compelling, just like you did. I want you to stop seeing her. And I wanted you not to fuck Marcus, but you told me that wanting to constrain your emotional evolution was me being closed-minded and adhering to outdated relationship structures. So why should I stop seeing Simone? Why should I constrain my growth to make you comfortable when you wouldn't constrain yours to make me comfortable? I had no answer, could feel my own logic being used against me in ways I'd never anticipated, could feel the framework I'd built crumbling as it was applied equally rather than just benefiting me. Here's what's going to happen, Kieran said, standing up. I'm going to continue seeing Simone. We're going to continue our emotional evolution together, and you can either accept it as growth and be happy for my personal development, or you can admit that your whole framework was just sophisticated-sounding justification for doing whatever you wanted while expecting me to accept it. Your choice. That's not fair. It's exactly as fair as what you did. It's your philosophy applied equally. It's your framework taken seriously. You wanted an evolved relationship that moved beyond traditional monogamy. Congratulations. You have one. I'm emotionally evolving with my ex-girlfriend, and you get to experience what it feels like to have your partner pursue connections elsewhere and call it growth. Fala. N-E-N. He left, went back to wherever he'd been staying, left me alone in our loft to sit with what had just happened, to process that he'd slept with his ex-girlfriend 6 times, to feel the betrayal and hurt and fury that I apparently hadn't expected to feel when I was on the receiving end of emotional evolution. The next week was absolute torture, complete psychological and emotional torture, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. He'd text me occasionally with updates about his emotional growth and relationship evolution. Updates that used my exact language, my exact framework, my exact philosophical approach, turned back on me in ways that felt like knives. Spending time with Simone tonight, one text would say, really helping me understand myself better on deep levels. Our intellectual connection is profound. Feel like I'm growing as a person through this relationship. Thanks for introducing me to the concept of emotional evolution. Had a really meaningful conversation with Simone about life goals and values, another message would say. Realized how much I've been missing this kind of intellectual stimulation. She challenges me to think differently. She expands my perspective. Exactly what you described about connection leading to personal growth. Simone and I are exploring physical intimacy as an expression of our emotional connection. A particularly devastating text said, "It's not just sex, it's communication through touch, it's growth through vulnerability. It's exactly what you meant about how physical connection with someone new can expand your capacity for human connection rather than diminish existing relationships." Every single message felt like a physical blow. Every update about Simone felt like betrayal compounded. Every use of my own language and concepts against me felt like mockery designed to hurt. I'd try to call him desperate to talk, desperate to make him stop, desperate to explain that this wasn't what I'd meant. He wouldn't answer the calls, would let them go to voicemail without listening to the messages I left. I'd text back asking, then begging, to talk in person, to work this out, to stop this revenge cycle. He'd reply hours later with responses like, "Busy emotionally evolving with Simone tonight. Will reach out when I have time between growth opportunities." Or, "Can't talk now. Simone and I are having deep conversations about building our connection. Don't want to interrupt my personal development with discussions about outdated relationship structures." Or, "I'm focusing on relationships that serve my growth right now. You taught me that. You taught me to prioritize emotional evolution over conventional monogamous obligations, so that's what I'm doing." I talked to friends frantically during that week about what was happening, sent screenshots of his messages, explained the whole situation, my conference with Marcus, my emotional evolution framework, his revenge with Simone, his cruel updates using my language. Most of them were genuinely appalled by both of us, said we were both cheating on each other and both justifying it with intellectual pretentiousness, and both destroying what could have been a good relationship with selfishness and philosophy that masked basic moral failures. A few took my side initially, said what Kieran was doing was deliberate revenge and therefore worse than my initial pursuit of authentic growth. Said he was being cruel by sending those updates. Said he was punishing me rather than genuinely exploring connection. But even they became less sympathetic as the week went on. and I kept defending my framework while complaining about his application of it. One friend, her name is Jordan, finally told me what I needed to hear but didn't want to accept. "You cheated on him," Jordan said flatly. "You fucked someone at a conference and came home and told him it was personal growth. You expected him to be okay with it because you'd intellectualized it. You thought using sophisticated language made it not betrayal. And now he's showing you what your philosophy actually means when applied equally. And you hate it. Because it was never really about emotional evolution or moving beyond monogamy. It was about you wanting to do whatever you wanted while he stayed faithful. That's not, I genuinely believe in the framework. Then be happy he's evolved emotionally with his ex," Jordan interrupted. "Be glad he's pursuing connections that stimulate him. Celebrate his growth. If you actually believed what you said, you'd be fine with this. But you're not fine. You're devastated. Because you know it's cheating when he does it, even though you tried to pretend it wasn't cheating when you did it. She was right. I knew she was right. Could feel the truth of it even though I wanted to argue. Could feel my entire philosophical framework revealed as self-serving justification rather than genuine belief. Han dali tralahiaut in entatiukisao. 2 weeks after he'd told me about Simone, Kieran came back to the loft one final time. Sat down across from me with that same calm, resolved expression he'd had when he told me about his emotional evolution. "I've made some decisions," he said, "about us, about our relationship, about what I want going forward." "I want to work on us," I said immediately, desperately. "I want to stop all of this. You stop seeing Simone. I promise I won't pursue anyone else. We go back to monogamy and work on rebuilding trust." "I'm not interested in rebuilding," Kieran interrupted. "I'm interested in continuing to evolve. See, you were right about one thing. I have been emotionally evolving, just not in the way you meant. I've been evolving past you, past us, past what we had, and my evolution has led me to a clear conclusion. I want to be with Simone. Exclusively. Monogamously, actually, since we both believe in traditional relationship structures, and that means downgrading you from girlfriend to ex. You're breaking up with me for your ex-girlfriend. I'm choosing to pursue a relationship with someone I'm genuinely compatible with," he said. "Someone who shares my values about commitment and loyalty and monogamy. Someone who doesn't intellectualize betrayal as growth. Someone who doesn't cheat and then expect me to celebrate it as personal development. Someone who wants what I want, an actual committed exclusive relationship rather than sophisticated-sounding excuses for doing whatever we feel like. You did this to hurt me. You reconnected with her to punish me. I reconnected with her because you destroyed what you and I had," Kieran said firmly. "You cheated. You betrayed my trust. You tried to manipulate me into accepting it by using philosophical frameworks and modern relationship theory. And when I applied that same framework to show you how it felt, you couldn't handle it. You wanted different rules for yourself than for me. You wanted me to accept your emotional evolution while you got to be hurt by mine. And that showed me everything I needed to know about whether we were actually compatible. Please don't do this. Please give me another chance. I'll be monogamous. I'll commit fully. I'll stop talking about emotional evolution or any of it. I don't want another chance with you," he said quietly. "I want to be with Simone. Because spending time with her reminded me what a healthy relationship feels like. What it's like to be with someone who values loyalty, who doesn't try to rebrand cheating as growth, who doesn't expect me to intellectually engage with frameworks designed to justify betrayal. She's everything I want. You're everything I'm done with." "So you're choosing her?" "I'm choosing integrity," Kieran corrected. "I'm choosing someone whose values align with mine. I'm choosing a relationship based on actual commitment rather than sophisticated-sounding excuses for selfishness. And yes, that person is Simone. So you're being downgraded from girlfriend to ex. Your emotional evolution led you to Marcus for a few days. Mine led me to Simone permanently. Congratulations on your growth. I hope it was worth it. He stood to leave, paused at the door, looked back at me one more time. I'll be out of the loft by the end of the week. Found a place with Simone. We're moving in together. She's excited about building something real with someone who believes in actual commitment. You can keep this place and your emotional evolution framework and your modern relationship theories. I'm moving forward with someone who doesn't need philosophical frameworks to justify basic decency. Then he left, walked out, ended us, chose her, moved on completely while I sat there with the wreckage of what my emotional evolution had created. It's been 8 months since Kieran downgraded me from girlfriend to ex. 8 months since he chose Simone over me. 8 months since my framework of emotional evolution cost me the best relationship I'd had. 8 months of watching from social media distance as he builds the life with her that I destroyed with him. They look happy, really happy, posted photos from moving in together, from trips they've taken, from meeting each other's families. The kind of happiness that comes from actual trust and commitment rather than intellectual frameworks designed to justify whatever behavior you want. I think about that conference constantly, about meeting Marcus and feeling intellectually stimulated and pursuing that connection without considering the cost. About coming home and explaining it as emotional evolution rather than admitting I'd cheated. About genuinely believing my philosophical framework made betrayal acceptable as long as I was honest about it afterward. About expecting Kieran to engage with my ideas rather than his emotions. I understand now what I did wrong. I cheated on my boyfriend and then tried to intellectualize it. I betrayed someone who loved me and trusted me, and then used sophisticated language to avoid taking responsibility. I pursued what I wanted in the moment, without considering consequences, and then built a philosophical framework to justify selfishness. I expected different rules for myself than I'd accept from him. I wanted freedom to explore, while he remained faithful, and I understand why he responded the way he did, why he reconnected with Simone, why he slept with her 6 times and told me about his emotional evolution, why he used my exact language and framework against me. Because telling me I was wrong wouldn't have worked. Explaining how much I'd hurt him wouldn't have broken through my intellectual defenses. He needed to make me feel what I'd done to him, needed to show me what my philosophy looked like when applied equally, needed to demonstrate that my framework was self-serving rather than genuinely believed. The worst part is realizing my sophisticated understanding was actually just cheating with pretentious justification. Reading articles about ethical non-monogamy and relationship anarchy gave me vocabulary to excuse betrayal. Learning about how humans aren't naturally monogamous gave me evolutionary cover for acting on attraction. Developing my framework of emotional evolution gave me intellectual permission to do what I wanted regardless of who it hurt. But ethical non-monogamy requires consent from all parties. Relationship anarchy requires honest communication and agreements. Emotional evolution shouldn't mean unilateral decisions to pursue other people without discussion. I'd taken concepts that can work in consensual contexts and weaponized them as post hoc justification for cheating. I talked to Marcus once after everything ended, asked if he knew I had a boyfriend during the conference. He said I'd mentioned being in an evolving relationship structure, but nothing that made it clear I was in a committed monogamous partnership. Said if he'd known I was cheating on someone rather than in an open relationship, he wouldn't have been interested. Said my intellectual framework had apparently convinced him, just like it had almost convinced me. I see Jordan sometimes still. She asks how I'm doing, and usually I lie and say I'm fine. Sometimes I'm honest and say I'm still processing what I lost. She never says, "I told you so," but I can see it in her expression when I talk about Kieran and Simone. Can see her thinking that I had every warning, and ignored them all in favor of my sophisticated philosophy. I've thought about dating again, put up profiles on apps, gone on a few dates with men who seem interested, but I can't connect, can't invest, can't imagine trusting someone or being trusted after what happened. Keep thinking about how I'd react if someone told me they believed in emotional evolution as relationship philosophy. Keep knowing I'd run immediately from anyone who sounded like I did 8 months ago. I deleted all the articles I'd saved about modern relationship structures, unsubscribed from the podcasts about relationship anarchy, stopped reading books that intellectualize desire as something that shouldn't be constrained by monogamy. Not because those frameworks can't work for some people in consensual contexts, but because I use them wrong. Use them as permission rather than genuine philosophy. Use them to avoid accountability rather than to build something honest. I explained cheating as emotional evolution, told my boyfriend I'd slept with someone at a conference, and he should see it as my personal growth rather than betrayal. Expected him to intellectually engage with my framework rather than emotionally respond to my actions. Thought sophisticated language made infidelity acceptable. Thought modern relationship theory meant I could do whatever I wanted as long as I was honest afterward. He showed me what my philosophy looked like when applied equally. Reconnected with his ex-girlfriend, slept with her repeatedly, told me about his emotional evolution using my exact language, made me feel what I'd done to him, demonstrated that my framework was self-serving rather than genuinely believed, proved I wanted different rules for myself than I'd accept from him. And then he downgraded me from girlfriend to ex, chose Simone, moved forward with someone who shared his actual values, left me with my emotional evolution framework and the consequences of believing my own intellectual justifications. I learned that philosophical frameworks don't excuse betrayal, that sophisticated language doesn't make cheating acceptable, that reading about modern relationship structures doesn't give you permission to unilaterally change your relationship agreements. That emotional evolution is meaningless if it's just rebranded selfishness, that you can't intellectualize your way out of basic decency and loyalty. I learned by losing someone who actually loved me, by watching him build happiness with someone else, by experiencing what my framework looked like from the other side, by understanding too late that some things don't need intellectual engagement, they just need honesty and commitment and basic respect. It was the hardest lesson I've learned about relationships and myself, but it came too late. The relationship was already destroyed. Kieran had already moved on. Simone had already won not by competing, but by being what I wasn't, someone who believed in actual commitment rather than sophisticated excuses for breaking it. I explained cheating as emotional evolution. My boyfriend downgraded me to an ex and upgraded my ex to his girlfriend, and taught me that intellectual frameworks mean nothing without integrity.